I've spoken with Meryl Johnston. She is the founder of Bean Ninjas, which is a company that provides fixed fee-based bookkeeping services. She talked about the time-saving benefits of working with a bookkeeper for your business. She went through the dynamics of how to work with a bookkeeper and what you should expect out of the engagement. She also said that business owners should get to know more about accounting because it's a fundamental skill that can drive the growth of their business. Have a listen to sharpen your accounting skills. Hello, Ederson Oliveira here. This is another interview for the Outsourcing podcast where I talk to business owners, to specialists, to experts, and to people like you and me that are trying to make the outsourcing process and the outsourcing life better. And today I have a great guest. Her name is Meryl Johnston, and she is the founder of Bean Ninjas, which is a company that provides fixed fee bookkeeping services. Meryl, thank you very much for being here. Welcome.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Okay, so first let me tie this back to the audience of why outsourcing and bookkeeping. Well, if it's not obvious already, Bean Ninjas is providing bookkeeping outsourcing. So that's the connection. Now we can ease into our conversation. So Meryl, let me ask you this. Let's get some background information first. Can you tell us what Bean Ninjas is and how it came about? Give our 1 to 2 minutes explanation of how it came about.
Sure. So Bean Ninjas, as you mentioned, we provide fixed fee bookkeeping services and we specialize in Xero, which is cloud accounting software. The way that it came about was that so previously my background is as an accountant. I'm a chartered accountant. And prior to Bean Ninjas, I'd done my time working in a big accounting firm. I'd worked in commerce and then decided that I'd had enough of the long hours and I wanted more time to surf and travel. And so started an accounting consulting business. So that was called MCJ Consulting, and that was back in 2013. And I was doing project-based accounting work there, so implementing accounting systems. And they were generally, I was working with larger clients. They might have had 100 plus employees. It was a chunky kind of project work where my cash flow was up and down. And it was quite difficult to scale a team around that kind of project work. So Bean Ninjas came about when I looked at what I considered the flaws in my consulting business model and looked at the type of business that I wanted to run, which was a business that had recurring revenue where we were doing regular work every month and where we could create processes and build a team around that, and so that I could still have a bit of time to surf and do that work remotely from anywhere in the world. So Bean Ninjas was engineered around what I wanted out of a business, having not achieved that my first time round. And I joined forces with another accountant called Ben. And so we launched Bean Ninjas together back in July 2015. About 18 months in, I actually bought Ben out of the business and he went on to do virtual CFO type work. So he has a business doing that. And now I run Bean Ninjas as the sole founder, and also a lot of the team has continued on. So that's a bit of background about how we got started. And now Bean Ninjas is 2 years old, or just over 2 years old.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to start by covering something basic. I know the difference, but I want everybody knows so everybody knows the difference as well. What is the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper? Tell me.
Yes. So we get asked that question all the time. And I am an accountant, and a lot of people in our team are accountants, but the service we provide is bookkeeping. So there's a couple of different types of accountants. So normally if you ask someone, what does an accountant do? The typical answer is that they will file taxes, so personal income tax or for business. And they might help with advice around what type of business structure to use for asset protection or to minimize tax. And that's typically what an accountant would do. But there's a couple of other types of accountants. So there's management accountants, which help businesses improve performance by looking at data within the business. So they might help with things like putting together a cash flow forecast or putting together a budget, so then you can track your performance against how you were expecting to perform. And management accountants, with businesses of the size that we probably interact with, a lot of businesses would be aiming to work with someone like a virtual CFO who is helping to improve the performance of the business, whereas the tax accountant will assist with making sure that you're meeting your compliance deadlines and paying the optimal or the minimal amount of tax. So where a bookkeeper fits in with this picture is that bookkeepers are responsible for making sure that all of the data is entered accurately in the accounting system. So bookkeepers will often have a lot more knowledge than accountants around how to use particular accounting software, because they're in there day in, day out entering transactions, and will also have knowledge around how to integrate different systems. So Xero and QuickBooks Online, I know Xero has about 500 other add-ons that can be integrated. So some accountants will have knowledge about that, but often it will be the bookkeeper who's doing the day-to-day transactions that will know how to set up those integrations, and then each day make sure that the accounting records are kept up to date and accurate. And then the accountant will then use that information either for tax purposes or to improve performance of the business.
Got it. Okay. So I'm gonna go here to my case. I'm gonna ask for a one-on-one consultation here a little bit. I have a tax accountant. She does not do my bookkeeping. I do my bookkeeping. What would you tell me that I'm missing out?
So it's quite common in terms of a financial team life cycle. The most common team initially would be a business owner who would have an accountant who helps with tax, and then they would do their own bookkeeping. And that can work, but as a business grows, there's a couple of factors to consider about when you would outsource bookkeeping. So one is the value of your time. And so as a business grows, you as a business owner, your time is probably more valuable. So a lot of people would consider bookkeeping a lower value task than something like sales or talking to customers. So as your business grows, it makes sense for you as the business owner to outsource some of those lower value tasks. And so bookkeeping is often one of those first tasks that are outsourced, so you can free up more of your time. But with something like bookkeeping, you're providing access to financial information. So often as a business owner, you want to keep that information separate. You might not want to share that with the rest of your team, which is why it sometimes makes sense to outsource that outside of the business rather than having a team member look after bookkeeping. So if I was having a conversation with you, we'd look at, well, what are your requirements at the moment? How long does the bookkeeping take you? And are you optimizing it? So are you getting the information out of the accounting system that you need? Because it's one thing to allocate all of the transactions, but it's another to have it structured, so the chart of accounts structured in a way that's giving you information that's useful, so that you can track different profit margins or track different overhead expenses and then make decisions about that.
I mean, the reason why I ask is I know the benefits, and I have a good friend that just hired a bookkeeper, and according to him, now he walks away from everything tax related, and the bookkeeper actually is the one dealing with the accountant directly.
Yes.
You know, so
and that's how it should. That's how it should work. That's how we like to work too. So bookkeeping, it can be quite stressful, knowing, especially if you don't have a background in tax or accounting, knowing that you have these deadlines to meet and that you'll be fined if you don't meet those deadlines. So it is nice knowing that someone else is taking care of that, and that the bookkeeper, this is how it should work. The bookkeeper should be liaising with the tax accountant, and the accountant should be asking questions to the bookkeeper first rather than bothering the business owner, so that everything's getting sorted out and filed or lodged depending on the country. And then the business owner just knows that it's done and they can focus on growing their business.
Okay, so when I first landed on your site, I said, I need that. I need that for me. And I keep outsourcing more and more things on my business, in my life as well. So I said, I need that. But I found a problem. The problem is that You guys are only supporting Zero. How come? How come no QuickBooks? Come on, tell me.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, and a question that we are asked all the time. So I am Australian, and we started as Australian business. And so Xero is very popular in Australia, but now about 30% of our client base is in the US and Canada. And so often, QuickBooks is very big in the US, and so we're often asked that question. So this was actually a decision that we made when we launched the business 2 years ago, because there's a whole range of different accounting software out there. And we wanted to streamline our business and be the experts in one piece of software. So all of our team, we focus a lot of time on training and trying to stay at the forefront of what's happening in the industry. And it's very hard to do that if we were trying to do that across multiple pieces of software, because they can work quite differently. So before we started, we actually did quite detailed analysis of the top three, what we considered the top three cloud accounting software tools available for the type of clients that we work with, which are small online businesses. So when I say small, so turnover of between 100,000 and up to a couple of $1 million. And at that time when we did the analysis, so we went through the sales process, bills, payroll, reporting, integrations available, the number of bank feeds. When we did that analysis, at the time, we thought that Xero was the best tool for the type of clients that we wanted to work with. And occasionally there are exceptions to that. So if someone's using Infusionsoft, there's a better integration with QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online than there is with Xero. So there are exceptions to that. And if we do a scoping call with someone and they want something where QuickBooks is a better option, then we'll say that QuickBooks would suit you better, and then we'll refer them to another bookkeeper. And that's part of our bigger vision of having a niche and doing something really well, because bookkeeping is a big market. So we made a decision to focus on Xero, focus on online businesses like e-commerce, and concentrate on doing just that one thing really well.
Got it. So what I'm reading there is that there's an opportunity to have Bean Ninjas for QuickBooks, maybe.
Yes. Absolutely. It's very hard. We need to get customers that come to us that would sign up if there was QuickBooks. And we've a couple of times we've thought about whether we should branch into QuickBooks as well. But then we always come back to our purpose and our concept of having defined processes that everyone in the team can follow, and it's easy to train new accountants or new bookkeepers. And so we come back to that and always make the decision that, no, we're going to stick with Xero and be experts in that. And that's actually paid off. So earlier this week, we were actually announced as the Xero's regional partner, bookkeeping partner for Queensland, Australia. So we won that award just a couple of days ago, actually.
Congrats.
So we're very proud.
Very good, very good, very good. And I truly believe on focus. I mean, what you're talking about is focus, and that's fine. It's hard in the beginning, but once you make that commitment, it's just easy to check. Hey, does this go against our core differentiators? Yes or no? Yes. Great. We just walk away and we don't look back. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for focus. Let me ask you this, Meryl. Can you give me a bit of the feeling of how it is to work with a bookkeeper? Because I've been running my business for 10 years now. I don't have a bookkeeper. I intend to, but I'd like to have a little preview of how does it feel like working with a bookkeeper. Is that something that we do daily, weekly, monthly? What is the flow? Tell me a little bit about that.
So it probably depends on the size of the business and how often they need information. So with our larger businesses, we are in there reconciling transactions a couple of times a week, and then they can run reports and we will often send them reports on a weekly basis. But it is more expensive to do bookkeeping at that frequency. So it's usually only larger businesses that actually need those reports and want to make decisions that would do that. So for smaller businesses, it's often done on a monthly basis, although we do try and encourage clients to, as their business grows, to start keeping on top of everything weekly and just having a set day where we do the bookkeeping, we'll send over a couple of questions about transactions that we haven't seen before or suppliers we haven't seen before. But generally, working with a bookkeeper, you would agree on a frequency, and that's usually weekly or monthly. And for some people, it's daily, but that's not the norm. And usually, you would agree. So there'd be a scoping process up front to talk about what kind of reports would be useful for you as a business owner, and then the chart of accounts. So the chart of accounts is the account codes that you use. So if you're wanting to track different sales categories, then you would have a different account for each sales category, and the same with expenses. So it's important to agree on that up front, and then also discuss what types of transactions. So that's usually something that the bookkeeper would present back to a business owner to say, well, we have an account code called software costs, and our standard is to code Google, Dropbox, a whole range of Help Scout. We generally would code it to that account code. So then the business owner knows when they're looking at their reports and something spiked up in a particular month that they weren't expecting, they'll know what should be in there, and then can investigate why it has gone up or down. So that's how the relationship would start initially. And over time, bookkeepers get familiar with the types of suppliers, the type of transactions that come through. So there might be some of the questions initially at the beginning of the relationship to understand who suppliers are and what particular costs are. And over time, that number of questions would reduce. So the goal is eventually that the bookkeeper will have enough of an understanding of the business that they can go and code or reconcile all of the transactions and just present a set of reports to the business owner each month, where they can just have a look on their phone wherever they're out and about and see what's happened and trends between particular months.
Got it. So when you say reconcile, does that mean also the time of entering of if there is manual, anything manual to be done there? I mean, is that done, as you said, for mid-size to a small to mid-size business? That's usually done once a month. So once a month, the bookkeeper sit down and reconcile everything. It does the work in a single shot. Is that how it happens?
Yeah, so when I say small to mid-size, let me rephrase. So I'd say that it would be a freelancer would probably do it once a month.
Got it.
But if it was a business that's getting up to maybe $300,000 to anything more than that, and they have a couple of staff, then we'd definitely be trying to get them to do the reconciliations weekly, just because the volume of transactions would be higher, and it just gets everyone in a good, consistent routine. And as a business grows, we recommend that rather than the business owner being the point of contact for questions, that they have an assistant who the bookkeeper and can liaise directly with the assistant for copies of receipts or questions about transactions. So because the whole point of the exercise of outsourcing is to free up the business owner's time. And so that's how we like to work. So a freelancer or a consultant may not have an assistant, in which case we'd work directly with them. But as a business grows and they're hiring staff, we recommend working directly with the assistant to answer questions with the reports going to the business owner.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit, Meryl, about let's move to your team. Let's move to your organization, your team, how you are growing your organization, because I would assume that you are hiring people all over the globe. You are actually, first of all, let me ask you, which markets are you attending to at this point in time?
So we have clients in the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and Hong Kong. We don't actually promote that we don't say Hong Kong on our website, but we get referrals there occasionally. So we've got a couple of clients there too. But the majority of our clients are in Australia and the US. And then we have local bookkeepers in each of those countries. So the local bookkeepers manage the relationships, and they have an understanding of country-specific laws like GST in Australia or sales tax in the US. And then we also are slowly building a team in the Philippines.
Got it. And the ones that you have, because in a way, you also outsource. You also, because you work with people all over the globe, I can imagine that some are full-timers, some are part-timers, correct?
Yes.
Got it. So,
yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, so the staffing mix has changed over the first few years. So when we actually started the business, I spent about a month in India and was trying to build a team to do all of the bookkeeping with a team of chartered accountants in India. And that's the direction that the accounting industry was moving. But I've learned a really valuable lesson from that, because we were such a new business and we didn't have defined processes. That didn't work for us. So after a couple of months, we actually scrapped the working with the team in India, and then went to local bookkeepers who, because our number one priority was to give a good experience to the client. And that part of that is about accurate bookkeeping, but part of that is about the way that being easy to communicate with. And so that was when we realized that local bookkeepers would provide a better experience. And only once we'd improved our systems, and then a local bookkeeper could manage someone somewhere like the Philippines to handle some of the processing, but not impact the client experience, then we could go down that path. So we're actually only now 2 years on. We've only just recently got our first full-time staff member in the Philippines. So that was quite an interesting lesson for us, because I followed what I thought was happening in the industry. Everyone's getting teams in India or the Philippines or other lower cost countries. But the lesson for me was that you need to have processes and other strong people in the business first before outsourcing to a country like that.
Got it. Okay, let me explore that topic a little bit more that you just mentioned there, Meryl, because I hear that quite a lot, and I like to see different perspectives on the subject. What were some of the challenges, let's put it this way, that you had when you experienced doing with India and now with the Philippines? But again, back then with India, what were some of the challenges that you had there?
So because we didn't have defined processes, there was a lot of time spent going backwards and forwards explaining tasks. And then I felt, because I wanted clients to have a good experience, I was reviewing every email that went out. So it wasn't actually saving much time. And in fact, it was probably taking longer. But I realized that was my fault, because we didn't have proper processes. Whereas now we have checklists and we have a whole lot of notes and a handover process from the team that do the scoping call with the client to the team that are doing ongoing delivery. So there's a whole lot of steps, and we've been refining it over 2 years. So I think there's probably two challenges. So one was the lack of processes and the lack of training that we provided to the staff in India. And then the other was the communication skills. Because we were only communicating via email too, there was probably some things that were getting lost in translation, which meant a lot of backwards and forwards between me and the team, and also me needing to review everything. So it actually slowed business growth, because if we had hired local staff earlier, then they could have run with client relationships sooner, which meant that Ben and I could have focused on growing the business rather than on doing nitty-gritty client work.
Got it. So what you're telling me is that, yes, it works fine with Philippines or with India, as long as you have strong processes in place that people can follow them. Is that what I'm getting?
It is. And so now we've got a great staff member in the Philippines, and she's excellent at following processes, has a high attention to detail and a really good attitude, but she wouldn't necessarily have the skill set to create the process. So I feel like there's two different people that need to be, or possibly more, but someone is a different skill set in creating a process and solving all of those problems as it is to following it. So either you as the founder need to create those processes, or hire someone that can create those processes and then train other people.
Out of curiosity, and of course, everything here is out of curiosity. How do you go about finding local people in the different countries, in US, in Canada, in the UK, Australia? I know that you are from Australia, but in the other countries, how do you go about finding them?
So it's generally all been through networks. So our first US and UK staff member were both recommended to us through networks that we had. Our third international staff member had heard me interviewed on a podcast that was pitched at accounting firm owners. And he approached Beer Ninjas. I'd say, so our early hires, we did have to put ads out or on job websites in Australia Seek and also on LinkedIn to find staff. But now most of our staff come to us through it. They either approach Beer Ninjas because they'd like to work, I think because we're a bit different to a typical accounting firm, or they're friends with someone that works here, or they're connected to us in some way. In the early days, it was the traditional job channels. And then we actually had, one of our strategies was a Facebook ad of me working at an island surf resort, saying, because it's a remote role, so we actually ran Facebook ads to that. And that actually created a lot of interest. We actually got a couple of clients out of that. That was our only successful Facebook ads campaign. And it wasn't even targeted at clients. It was actually about hiring staff.
Got it. Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit more now about your clients. You mentioned briefly that you focus usually on the online entrepreneur, on the online type of businesses. Is that the only one? I mean, talk to me a little bit about your client profile.
So working with online businesses, that evolved. So when we first launched Beer Ninjas, we just wanted to work with anyone. So we were working with all kinds of clients, from tradesmen, cafes, online businesses. And it was only about 6 months in where we sat down and did an exercise and looked at a whole range of factors to try and work out, well, who is our ideal client, and what we wanted to do from that was then to work out how to market to that ideal client. But the first exercise was working out, well, who are we the best fit for? And so we looked at which customers were having the best experience with us. So who was actually loving working with Beer Ninjas, and then which were our most profitable clients. So we had set up tracking within Xero so that we could track margins on each client. So we're able to get some trends around different industries to see which clients were unprofitable and which industries were good to work with. And then we looked at who did we enjoy working with. And we, as a remote business ourselves, we found that we like working with other businesses where we could work remotely. So where a team member didn't need to be on site at a particular cafe or location. And so they were the three factors we used to work out our ideal clients. And online business is still quite broad. So within that, we then have specialised in a couple of segments within that, which was e-commerce. And again, that just happened naturally. We started with a few e-commerce clients, and then it's a bit of a specialised area of bookkeeping. So that evolved from there. And then some software as a service type style businesses where they're developing software and selling it. And then also quite a lot of consultants and coaches. So someone that was an expert in something, and then they've written a book, they have a podcast, they're professional speakers. So we work with quite a lot of people like that, and quite a few have membership sites as well. So it was partly it evolved, and partly we actively thought about who we want to have fun with who we're working with. We want to enjoy each day and the people that we're interacting with. So that was actually quite a big factor too.
Yeah, I mean, if I look locally here, I'm from Toronto, Canada. If I look here locally, it's hard to find an accountant or a bookkeeper that has experience dealing with online type of businesses. So it's very refreshing to hear that this is your sole, most of your focus go towards that audience,
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, Meryl, one of the ways that we learn as people, as business owners, is by facing roadblocks, facing mistakes, and facing what I call horror stories. I wonder if, I know that you have horror stories there. I don't know if you are willing to share some of those with us. So feel free to share a horror story. It might be dealing with a client. It might be dealing with a provider of, outsourcing work somewhere else. But tell us a little horror story, and what were the lessons that you learned out of that story?
Well, probably the biggest event and the biggest challenge that we had within Beer Ninjas was actually the business partnership and me buying out my business partner. So I won't call it a horror story because it all worked out for the best, but that was probably the most challenging experience of me in the business. So Ben and I we were equal partners and co-founders in Bean Ninjas. And about a year in, we realized that we wanted to take the business in different directions. So Ben had a young family to support, so he had more financial commitments than I did. And also maybe was more risk averse. So I wanted to grow faster and Ben he had a family. So that was probably a major consideration in the kind of risks that he take. And so over time, we realized that we were getting frustrated with each other and the way that we were working. So I didn't have a family, so I was willing and able to work 60 hours a week if I needed to, whereas Ben had another business which he needed to work in to earn enough to support his family. So he wasn't able to work or put in the same number of hours that I could with Bean Ninjas, but also didn't have the same growth ambitions that I did. And we also had different management styles. And one of the mistakes that we made early on was because we had similar skill sets, both being accountants, we ended up doing a lot of the same roles. So we could both do sales, we could both do the bookkeeping work, we could both manage staff, we could both write blog posts. And so at the beginning, each of us was doing a bit of everything. So we did work that issue out over time, and then we created separate roles. And so I was responsible for marketing and business development. And then Ben was responsible for managing the team and service delivery. But again, we had another mismatch because I was being really active in growing the business and bringing in clients and wanted to grow faster, but Ben was responsible for the service delivery. So I was bringing in more clients than we could handle. So again, that caused some issues. And there was a period more than a year ago now where some of our service standards dropped because we were taking on too many clients at once. And that was really challenging because we wanted to grow, but for us, the number one source of new business was referrals because our number one goal was to do good work and give clients a good experience. And we had a couple of clients that were unhappy and leave, and that we hadn't really had that before. We'd had clients leave because changes happened within their business and they didn't need us, but not because we'd done poor work. And so that was really difficult for both of us to handle. And we learned from that and put processes in place. But as a business partner, an equal business partner, it's very difficult. You don't want to manage your business partner. So I felt like I needed to back up and support Ben as well. So if he was going to make decisions and for the team, then I needed to be there backing him up, not having a different opinion, because as a leadership team, we needed to have a united front. So I felt like we needed to make changes in the operational part of the business. But also, I felt like I couldn't give instruction to an equal business partner. So I needed to persuade him. And that's when we started to have those conversations, which are difficult conversations to have. That's when we both realised, okay, maybe we are actually wanting to go in different directions. Maybe we are better with one of us buying the other out. And then we went through a whole process of working out how to come up with that deal and putting a contract in place. How do we make sure that this won't impact clients and impact any of our staff? And so that was a huge project to actually take that from the initial conversations that maybe we're not right as equal business partners to actually how do we actually make this happen, and for me to buy Ben out, and then that transition plan. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge that I've faced in running Bean Ninjas, but I'm really happy with how it's worked out. So Ben, we actually still have a really good relationship, and he's the tax accountant and does virtual CFO work for a lot of Bean Ninjas clients. So I feel quite proud actually that through that difficult situation, we're able to come out the other side and negotiate it without lawyers and still now be able to refer work to each other and still have that good relationship.
Okay, great. I mean, thank you very much for being that open. I'm sure that it was not a horror story as you said, but a tough story. Anyway, let's look back.
I should add. So at the beginning, we didn't feel comfortable talking about it, but then Ben and I have done a podcast interview together where it was called The Breakup, and so we both talked about our experience. So that's why I feel comfortable talking about it now.
Now, in hindsight, Meryl, when you look back, what would you have done differently? And maybe it's about not going in business with a 50-50 partner, but what could have been done differently if you want to go with a partner? I mean, what could have been done differently there?
Yeah, so good question. So if I had my time again, I probably still would have had the business partner. Maybe would have structured the agreement differently, but I don't feel like the business would have grown so quickly if I didn't have a business partner. So I probably still would do that. But maybe, I think in hindsight, we should have had a separation between ownership and the wages that we were paid, because we were working, our contributions were quite different. So that is something that we should have done differently. In terms of lessons learned, so we've made lots of mistakes along the way, but I think there is all of those things that you learn from. So we've made mistakes around not hiring early enough, that we've made that mistake a couple of times. So then the team is really busy, and our hiring process takes about 4 to 6 weeks by the time we do rounds of interviews and skills tests, reference checks, police checks. So that takes a period of 6 weeks. And then it takes about 2 months to have someone trained on all of our systems and running effectively. So that's quite a long lead time so we need to, and it's hard to get that right in terms of flagging 3 months early that now is the time to start that hiring process when you don't need them quite yet. So that's probably, I'd say that's probably the most common mistake that we've had is around staffing. And yeah.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. Let's talk a little bit more about, we are almost towards the end here, but let me ask you this. How do we define success to your clients? I mean, you have, your portfolio of clients. How do you say, hey, this is working very well for this client and that client? How do we define success from their perspective?
So if I put myself in our clients' shoes and think about what they want from a bookkeeper, I think they want peace of mind. So they want to know that all of their deadlines are being met without them needing to drive it. So they want someone contacting them about upcoming sales tax deadlines or whatever it is. So peace of mind that someone else is driving and taking ownership of that process. They want as little input from them as possible. So they want someone at the other end that's being proactive. So if we've been successful, we've been proactive in being able to answer most of our own questions and set up processes internally and use technology so that rather than asking questions, we'll use a tool like Receipt Bank so that a business owner can take photographs of receipts when they're out. So it's very easy for them. So if we've saved the business owner time, it's been successful. Then the last one is if the business owner is receiving reports that are helping them to drive their business forward. So it's not enough just to receive reports and not understand them. We want everyone to understand the reports they're receiving and then be able to use those reports to make decisions. Decisions like they might have too high a percentage of admin staff if they're a service business, their admin staff percentage is too high compared to delivery staff, or their overheads are too high compared to where their sales are at the moment and they need to cut something back. So having the information to make decisions like that. And part of that is about accurate reports, but the other part is understanding them. And so we try and take the time to talk with any new clients the first time they get a set of reports to make sure that they actually make sense.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is that it's not only data collection that you're providing. I mean, data collection, data categorization. You're actually analyzing the data on clients' behalf as well. Is that what I'm getting here a little bit?
So we don't actually do the analysis. So the analysis, well, for a couple of large clients that are on custom packages, we do. Okay. So my skill set is doing that kind of analysis. So we can do it, but that's not necessarily something that we sell in our fixed fee packages. Okay. So usually we recommend either the business owner develops those skills, and there's certain ways and books to read where you can develop those skills, or that they hire a virtual who does the analysis. But we can collect all of the data and present it in a way that it's easy to do that analysis. So, but it requires a certain understanding of industries and also accounting knowledge to be able to do that analysis.
Perfect. Okay, that answers the question. Thank you for that. So Mary, if there is one thing here that you'd like people to leave this conversation knowing about, it might be about bookkeeping, it might be about outsourcing, it might be about something else. Is there any one thing that you want people to leave this conversation knowing?
So I think it probably should be a bookkeeping tip, because that's my area of expertise. And my tip would be for business owners to invest in their own knowledge around accounting. I think it's a fundamental skill and will drive success in your business. So it's good to outsource the processing, but I think every business owner should have an understanding of what a profit and loss statement is, what a balance sheet is, how to interpret what they mean, and also be aware of things like what a cash flow forecast is. And even if they're not creating it themselves, at least know what it is and that it might be relevant for their business at some point in the future. So business owner knowledge. And the other would be move to cloud accounting software as soon as you can. It's difficult once your business is established to change accounting software, and it's a pain moving from even something like spreadsheets. And you can save a lot of time. The automation, so the cost of the accounting software would be covered by I'm sure you'd save at least an hour or two every month, and your hourly rate as a business owner would be worth more than the cost of the software. So I'd encourage everyone to get Xero or QuickBooks Online started as soon as possible and start building your accounting processes. And one day when your business grows big enough, you might want to outsource it.
Love it. And I might as well consider changing to an accountant that supports Xero, maybe at some point.
Yeah, it's great software.
See, Meryl, again, thank you very much for your time here. Before I let you go, I'd like you to, tell people how they can reach out to you, how they can contact you via the website, via, social, whatever you like. Please go for it.
So our website is Bean Ninjas, which is BEAN and ninjas.com. If you wanted to connect with me, exactly, yeah. If you wanted to connect with me, I'm on Twitter, Meryl Johnston. We can maybe put a link to that.
Yeah.
And the website's probably you'll get the fastest reply from there.
Very good, very good. So, as usual, all links will be posted in the show notes of this interview. So again, Meryl, thank you very much for your time, for your expertise, for sharing your knowledge on bookkeeping, for preaching about Xero as well. I mean, I'm going to consider that heavily now. And thank you for your time, and hope to catch up to you at some point in the near future. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure.